Hi everyone, John Heath here again for Milton Rose Learning with another Let's Learn video on Frankenstein. So arguably the best novel ever written by a teenager. So we're going to look, as we normally do, on some of the basics and give you, some kind of very important plot points. Then we'll look at some of the key context because it's really important that you understand the history and some of the social stuff that was going on at the time. And then we will finish off by meeting some of the characters and, most importantly, what they symbolize and represent, so we can get to the real thematic heart of the novel. Okay, so let's dive in. So first off then, if we tackle the genre. So first off then, this is very much a Gothic novel, as the image kind of intimates. So it blends together kind of science fiction, psychological horror. This is a real kind of meaty novel in that sense. And Shelley fuses dark Romanticism, which was an artistic movement which you might want to research, with early science fiction to explore notions of creation of life, social isolation, which is felt by the monster, and the consequences of transgressing natural boundaries, such as creating life and trying to play God, which we'll get into in a little bit more detail. Okay then. Then in terms of a plot summary then, so it revolves around an ambitious scientist, Victor Frankenstein, as you can see there in the image. He's looking very tense. And he creates a living creature from dead body parts, as you do. But then he becomes horrified by what he's done and what he's made, and he abandons the creature. So the creature themselves, that once have been created, is rejected by society and its creator, the Doctor, and then becomes violent, seeking revenge for such a horrible life and for being brought into the world in that kind of quite grim sense. Then, as the novel continues, then the monster demands that Victor Frankenstein makes a female companion for them because they're very lonely. But when Victor destroys her because he's horrified by the idea of kind of populating the world with these kind of monsters, the creature then starts killing those that Victor loves in a kind of fury of revenge. So the novel continues, and consumed by guilt and vengeance, Victor pursues the creature to the Arctic, of all places, where he ends up dying. The creature vanishes, mourning his creator. Okay, so it's a bit of a kind of open resolution in some ways, but a very tragic one that shows the dangers if we do try and create life and play God. Okay, so if we move on up to context then. Now, it's very important to understand the context if you want to get the high grades, as we always know. So Shelley was writing during a time of great scientific progress and intellectual kind of curiosity. There was two modes of thought. We had the Enlightenment, which was pushing logic and science and kind of really developing humanity in that way. And then we had Romanticism, which was saying, no, we don't want to do that. We want to focus on things like our emotions and nature, and a little bit more slower paced, if I'm simplifying like that. And Frankenstein, as a novel, kind of questions the Enlightenment ideals of science and progress and rationality, because it challenges them in the sense of showing, well, what happens if we push science too far? What about the moral limits of that? You know, trying to create life and trying to kind of like do dangerous experiments. Doesn't it lead us into evil areas? And the religious view at that time would be, yes, it does. We need to kind of rein it in and not be so science obsessed. But that's kind of a philosophical debate, probably for another day, but very, very deep stuff. Then we have, building on that, we have the notion of scientific discovery and, quote unquote, playing God. So inspired by real experiments at the time, like Galvani's work with electricity, the novel reflects real social anxieties about the dangers of unchecked scientific ambition that could end up to humankind trying to play God. And what we mean by play God, we mean kind of trying to create life like God created, humans on Earth, arguably. So it's that kind of mankind's hubris, where we're trying to almost play God, and the dangers of that. And Shelley really plays on those social anxieties about that, and she really explores those in a lot of depth within the novel. And the last piece of context really is social outcasts and what we would call the other, in inverted commas. So this was written in a time of very rigid class, gender, and even appearance norms. And the creature then, who is very much an outsider, obviously, is almost an allegory or a metaphor reflecting how society mistreats anybody who is different or who doesn't conform with the social norms at that time. And so therefore the creature kind of represents this kind of outsider, and is used by Shelley to explore the stifling kind of social norms of the society at the time. And it's very important to kind of wrap your head around that as well, because obviously the monster is very much a narrative device to explore that piece of context. Okay then, so if we move on to the key characters then, let's get a feel for these characters and kind of what they're all about. Okay, so first off then we have Victor Frankenstein. So he is a brilliant but obsessive scientist who creates life, obviously plays God, but then rejects his own creation. He's kind of appalled by what he's done. So he embodies the dangers of unchecked ambition and the quest for forbidden knowledge. Okay, kind of learning everything and unlocking the secrets of life even. But however, as we know, he also represents the tragic consequences of irresponsibility, of humankind being quite an immature race or civilization, and trying to play God was always going to end up in tragedy. And I think that's the real moral didactic message of Frankenstein. Then we have the creature. Okay, so obviously Frankenstein's monster. So the creature is actually intelligent and sensitive, but feared and rejected because of his appearance. Okay, he does not fit into traditional society. He begins with compassion, but eventually, because he's rejected so badly, he turns vengeful after repeated abandonment and cruelty. So from a sympathetic reading, the creature isn't like irredeemably evil. You could argue that the creature is more a sympathetic character because we should have treated him better and maybe things would have turned out, slightly better potentially. But it's all about your interpretation, really. But the creature symbolises the impact of societal prejudice, the need for belonging, and ultimately the consequences of neglect. This creature is created and then abandoned, and then goes on a vengeful kind of path through the rest of the narrative. So it's quite important. The creature really symbolises the real thematic heart of this novel. Okay, then we have Elizabeth Lavenza. So Victor's adopted cousin and fiancée. She's gentle, loyal, and ultimately idealised. She represents, therefore, passive femininity and the emotional cost of Victor's ambition, because her tragic death reflects the collateral damage of the male ego, i.e. Victor Frankenstein's, and scientific obsession. By creating this monster, it ultimately leads to Elizabeth's kind of untimely demise. Then Alphonse Frankenstein. Let's try and get it on the screen. So Victor's caring, rational father who urges him to seek balance and emotional support. So that he's a symbol of traditional values and paternal authority and concern for family honour. So ultimately, Alphonse highlights how Victor's isolation cuts him off from all kind of rational guidance and compassion, because he just chases this scientific dream and ultimately doesn't listen to his father in any meaningful way. Then we have Henry Clerval. So Victor's best friend. So he is a romantic and idealistic foil, or kind of comparison almost, to Victor's obsession with science. So he embodies humanism, creativity, and moral warmth, the kind of values which Victor Frankenstein loses in his pursuit of science. However, Henry's murder shows the reach of Victor's guilt and the innocent lives that are destroyed by his ambition ultimately. Then we have Robert Walton. So he is an ambitious Arctic explorer, and he kind of is a narrative device. He almost frames the novel through his letters to his sister. And he mirrors Victor's obsessive pursuit of knowledge and glory through his kind of exploration, kind of exploits. And his change of heart at the end contrasts with Victor's stubbornness and suggests that by changing his mind and his focus, he suggests that redemption is possible. People can, if they go down a bad path in the novel, they can come back and actually show themselves to still be capable of good acts in that sense. And then we have William Frankenstein. So Victor's young brother, who ends up murdered by the creature, he's obviously therefore a symbol of innocence and the first victim of Victor's neglect. And his death sparks a chain of guilt, grief and vengeance, almost like a narrative catalyst, which is a great phrase maybe for your essays. Okay, so if we just zoom out there for a second. So hopefully what we've done there is just given you a really nice kind of overview of Frankenstein, just giving you some of the basics, just some of the key plot points. Open the door to some of the context as well, so that'd be really lovely for you to maybe go off and do a bit of research now, and then introduce you to some of the key characters, because obviously it's really important those are used to explore the key themes throughout the novel. So it just remains to say, really, obviously, if you've found this video useful, please feel free to hit the like, subscribe and tap the bell icon. It just helps us to grow, obviously, and then we'll obviously be making a lot more videos as we move forward. And obviously, thanks for watching and see you soon.